Thank you so much. Welcome. Like I said, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Good to see you all. And this is one of the breakout sessions on data, computer science, healthy technology, and engineering. My name is Katie Zhu. It's really my great pleasure and honor to be here today, leading and facilitating the discussion on healthy longevity in this Global Innovator Summit. I will try my best just to monitor the chat while I'm giving the talk, but feel free to stop me anytime. I don't anticipate I'll be mostly talking for those of you who are not familiar with the breakout sessions. This is what we plan to do. So first, I'm going to spend 5 to 10 minutes briefly introducing a digital health project I did several years ago. The main concept for that is not to encourage we all, put all our time and energy and attention on that particular project. Rather, I like to use that as an icebreaker just to set ball rolling, get the discussion going. I'd be more interested in hearing your own experience, your own research and study, and even lessons learned in the area. I'd like to focus more on the digital health technologies, particularly the sensors and wearables, how we could apply those technologies to improve healthy longevity. So without further ado, let's just get started. This is one of the side projects we did when I was at the IBM Watson Research Center. By the way, I'm currently at Yale. I'm the executive director for the Yale Center for Biomedical Data Science. And this was several years ago when I was the physician scientist lead at IBM. We were sort of exploring things, trying just to acknowledging the advancement in the sensors and the wearable technology field and how the digital health, the promise and opportunities they may lay for us. So I would say it's a very preliminary study, and I wish to hear more from you, how you can take it to a different level. So the whole context of the digital health was around the scope and the notion of the health data. It's said that today an individual can generate up to 1,100 terabytes of data per lifetime. And the majority of the data actually is not from the clinical or genomic sources we're quite familiar. For example, the electronic health record data or the DNA sequencing. The majority is actually from the exogenous data, meaning, for example, what you eat, where you live, how you work, the kind of a lifestyle you have, and whether you exercise and work out often, things like that, or environmental factors all play a very important role in our healthcare, in our well-being, in our longevity issue. And of course, as we improve the healthy longevity issue, I'm sure this number will just keep growing and growing, be bigger and larger. So that's basically, motivated us to take a look at what kind of things we might be able to do around that area. So these are some examples, consumer grade sensors and the wearables we try to explore first, just to see, what might be some minimally invasive way for us to be able to get a better understanding of what's going on in our bodies. So we chose these because of their popularity, availability, and accessibility, also the proliferation of these sensors. So one of the goals of the study, just to start with, we'd like to see the imbalance using these sensors to see which one might be the more reliable indicator for the imbalance of our parasympathetic and sympathetic system, the autonomic nervous system there. And in the layperson terms, like how stressed you are, how burnt out you gonna face, just to start with, because the population we would like to conduct the experiment with would be relatively healthy, just like you and me, in an outside the clinical settings, either at home, at work, on the road, do whatever normal activities. So we chose these. And the initial experiment, we tried to work on the EDA, electrothermal activity. We also measured some brain waves, that's EEG, electroencephalogram. data. We also measured the heart rate data and heart rate variability. We call it continuous heart rate variability, near continuous. So with the initial finding, we saw that the continuous heart rate variability actually is the most reliable and most convenient measure we could use just to take a closer look at the imbalance of the parasympathetic and sympathetic system. So, and by looking at the medical literature, we also found out that heart rate variability has been discovered to be linked with a variety of clinical conditions, from the dementia, depression to Alzheimer's, cardiovascular cancer, and in diabetes. The list can go on and on. So that's another motivation for us to dive deeper into this problem. So hopefully, we're not sure whether this is the reason or the result of the condition, but hopefully just by having a pair of tools on the side providing us more continuous data points, we'll be able to understand the problem better. With that, a set of algorithms and models were developed just to extract more accurate heart rate variabilities using the consumer grade sensors. We, like I said, there are many ways you could do in the doctor's office to have accurate data. But for a lay person, for someone who's not in that setting at home, are there any convenient ways we could also use and yield relatively satisfying results? So we did that. This is one of the things we're happy to be nominated at the American Medical Informatics Association Symposium for a distinguished paper. So we also did some in-field data. Like we said, we had the in-lab data, but most importantly, we like to see how the participants were the data while actually doing their normal daily activities. So here we can see some examples on the top. You see some activities being labeled, also with some emotions being reported as well. At the bottom of the screen, we see the relatively more objective data sensor signals being measured and displayed here. And the red meaning, more imbalance or more stress, and then blue is the opposite, and the yellow is something in the middle. Let me give you more examples of what we discovered. So we had more than 300 hours of the data. One of the participants was sort of like a new driver. She spent most of her time in Manhattan, but then just got her driver's license. She drove to work one day. And the moment she entered the room, she was like, I almost had a heart attack. I almost died on the road. There was a traffic jam. And then on the highway, on the brake, someone cut me. I was so angry. I could feel that I want to see my data if that happens. So clearly we could see the when and where that happened. She wasn't lying, and comparing to that experience, the rest of the working day seems to be like a meditation, relaxation session to her. And we had another participant doing public speaking. He was always a bit nervous about that. And right after that, there was a group discussion. So we could see clearly that he was more stressed out during the part he was giving the talk, and then the group discussion, he gradually relaxed into it. And this is another example about a young gentleman at home watching a close baseball game. So obviously very apparent, we could tell where the halftime break was. So it was a lot of fun to run this project, but so overall we found that the results of the measuring was quite satisfying. But like I said, our ultimate goal is to figure out if minimally invasive sensor or wearable digital health technologies could provide more objective and continuous, even near real-time data points for us to have a better user interaction. By that, we mean this is how the interaction flow looks like in this particular project. We would like to sample more current behaviors and experience from the users, and to basically collect the context and more subjective information while we're doing the sensor activities, and see if we can combine them in the wild, be able to provide a more complete picture. So the reason why we want to do that is with the sensor information, there are so many out there. People always feel like, oh, we just collect data and then do the analysis. We would also hope with the same platform, we could also push some useful messages and contact aware, contact sensitive, contact appropriate recommendations back to the user at the moment, at the proper moment, at the right moment. The reason why we wanted to do that is because we realized there are so many health issues today. It's more or less related to health behavior, health lifestyle, behavior modification. So if the heart rate variability and the imbalance of the parasympathetic sympathetic system was a very easy thing for us to target, low-hanging fruit, but eventually can be many other conditions. If at the moment you could push some exercise recommendations and breathing, meditation, listen to music, taking a walk, or many other things, taking medications, this could offer a way for higher adherence. We were hoping with this, at least we have a 3 A's here with digital health technologies, wearables, and the sensors, at least for the users, for participants, for people at risk, relatively healthy, for people at risk, or even patients, be more aware of what's going on in their bodies. They probably were not equipped in the past, be able to see that, but now we have so many options. They might be able to be more conscious about what's going on, how they live their lives. And then with the data integration, advanced analytics, we were hoping to unmask some possible patterns we didn't know before, and still partially because the data was not available now. So we were hoping with that, we could turn data into useful information, the meaningful insight. And ultimately, like I mentioned, there has to be some sustainable actions on the patient's part, on the user's part. We might be able to proactively deliver some recommendations just for you, just at that moment. There might be some teachable moment we didn't realize if someone only goes to see a practitioner every half a year, or every year, we miss that opportunity. And there are people, different group at the company taking it to a whole new different level. They were trying to really target like a Parkinson's disease patients at home, trying to measure, monitor the motions and the gestures and stuff like that, and really combine it with real clinical interventions and treatment. So there are many, many ways to expand this. And in the end, there will be like a shared decision making. The users and the care providers could work together and decide on the most feasible, lifestyle, some interventions, and contribute to the healthy longevity. So I hope it didn't take too much time. This is just the setting the tone and getting our discussion going. I hope through this, I would be more interested to hear if you have any experience and any examples and studies in this area. And even if you haven't done a formal study, you probably have a smartwatch, have some devices. What are your thoughts about this? And then we can discuss about the challenges and opportunities and come up with some constructive suggestions and even future action items from our discussion group. Anyone would like to start?
Hi, Katie. Thank you. My name is John. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we're using wearable devices, specifically the Apple Watch right now, to collect behavioral data. When I say behavioral, sleep, exercise, socialization, monitoring sedentary behaviors on a set of individuals with Alzheimer's disease and dementia. We want to understand longitudinally, what are those behaviors that we can modify to help people delay or prevent the disease in the future, or to delay the progression of symptoms, if they already have the disease. So, Yeah, I think the advent of wearables, we now get to this point where we can put these devices on people who would generally not wear a device to passively collect that information. So it's an exciting time, but obviously lots of technology challenges. Trying to find a device that people actually wear. If they're not in the Apple ecosystem, will they adopt the wear of that, or if there's socioeconomic challenges in the United States, we're looking at the problem globally too. So what's the right wearable device? But I think we're at this very early stage where we're going to have devices all around us. Alexa and our phones are in front of us. So the information that we collect from typing speed and the cameras in our phones are all going to amass together to get a better picture of people's behaviors over time. And so it's just an exciting space to be in right now.
Great, excellent, John. We actually encountered all those challenges as well, and what you're doing was our dream, to take it to the next level, to really work on a specific clinical condition and have a right population to be engaged. But like I said, right here we have social determinants issues. Not only that not everyone could afford a piece of a device, but there's also a computer literacy issue, especially older population, and the smaller screen and all of these things we didn't even think was an issue. In the real experiment, it turned out to be an issue. And then here I said that, oh, sorry. I'm trying to close the chat here. Okay. There's a problem closing the chat here. Here's the technology-wise, we have problem with data collection, curation, management, mining, and even storing them, and the speed and the accuracy and being able to process near real time and then have some feedback. That itself is a challenge. And at the same time, we collect different data. I'm glad you shared this example. I wish we met many years ago just to brainstorm how you deal with all this famous V's, the volume, the variety, and at the same time, we lack the standard in this area for sensor data and wearable data. How do you integrate and share that with others? And if you need to, have another set of record, how the data sources, how do you make sense of it? A lot of practical technical issues as well. And besides that, we were often asked, who's going to pay for this? Will the patients pay for this? Will the providers pay for it? Will the insurance pay for it? And whose liability is? There are a lot of reasons behind why we chose relatively healthy participants and doing some harmless stress-related experience. Because even the IRB part, the regulators, who's gonna evaluate this recommendations you gave, and if something goes wrong and you're wearing the sensor, even though it's not related to the target condition you're measuring, and are you responsible for reporting it, and to who, in what way? And if it's a real emergency, that's great. But if not, are you causing more alerts and causing people alert fatigue and causing more noise in the system? So there are a lot of, I'd like to hear if you run into any of this, how you dealt with it.
If you're asking me, yes, I've had all those problems. Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing that we talk about, we're focused right now on the Apple Watch only because when you look at all the devices that are out there, the most popular one is the Apple Watch. If you just take a Fitbit, for example, there are probably, I'm just guessing, 12 different Fitbits, and of those 12, there may be 5 different sensors in those different watches, and each of those sensors has its own unique variability and accuracy issues. So when you're, I'm not an academic. I own a tech startup, but I work with academics, and when we're doing the research, we have a lot of people say, I can't use an Apple Watch because it's clinically, the data is not validated. So, I can't publish research. I'm like, okay, great, I understand that, but we have to put the cart before the horse at one point and start collecting that data. But when you talk about, going back to the Fitbit, those sensors are all different, and it makes it very challenging to build models to understand, how are each one of these different devices unique. But then when we say we want to use the Apple Watch, people say, well, now you're excluding half of the market. So more than half the market. Or, it's, if they're a Withings watch, you only have to charge it every 30 days. So, but at the expense of, hey, you're not collecting a lot of data. So so many different challenges. I'd love to connect with any of you offline, and I don't want to monopolize. There are a lot of people here. So, yeah,
I'd like to follow up on that, because as you were mentioning, like if we measure blood pressure with traditional devices, 120 over 80 measurement will be the same in China, Colombia, the US, Africa, anywhere. But then when these kind of biometrics are being collected by different devices with different sensors, it's difficult to normalize the information or to standardize the values that sometimes is collected. And the other point that I want to raise that is related to what you were mentioning, Kathy, is that where is the line between, how can I say that, to respect the freedom of the developers, but also the needs of the healthcare system? I'm not talking about insurers, but like public health as a system coordinated by globally, or at least nationally. And obviously respecting the privacy of patients, because lots of the data is being collected by these different wearables and smart fitness apps. But then the data is being stored only in the provider of the service. And then even as a researcher, it's very difficult to get access to the data, and the data that is being collected could guide public policies for healthcare systems. But it's very difficult to access it because it's proprietary data for the companies. So what can we do to try to determine what is the line to respect freedom, innovation, but also to be able to access these data that may be useful to guide better policies for people?
Ricardo, unless someone else has something to say, my company looks to partner with academic institutions and give them all of this data for free, because it helps you do that research right away, where you don't have to, I'm funded by NIH right now, and I know that pain process of getting funding to do research and then buying devices and then longitudinally collecting that data and storing it and processing it. So we look to partner with academic institutions and researchers so you can have that data and build valuable tools, in exchange for sharing that IP that comes out of it. So, but you're right, Apple doesn't collect personal data, and they don't even collect it at all. So you have to work with those app companies, but approach them. If you see a company, approach them and say, hey, listen, you have data that would be mutually beneficial. If you allow us to access it, we can help build behavioral intervention models and risk assessment, et cetera. So I think the other problem with using devices like Apple and Fitbit is when you go to show those behavioral interventions, forgive me, I'm out of my swim lane, but FDA and those regulatory agencies, they want to understand, okay, what algorithm did you use? Well, even me as a third-party company, I don't have access to the raw data, to the algorithms that Apple's using to collect that information. So that's a huge challenge for researchers like yourself, or startups to actually create behavioral interventions. So,
John, I'm just amazed that you could use Apple Watch data to start with. when we started the project, they didn't open to regular developers. We had to, we used like a Microsoft Moto 360, and then everyone's like, why? It's like, this was only open to developer. Yeah.
Well, so we still don't have access to raw data. We get the data, like you would see it on your iPhone, the aggregated data after that. But it's our ability to collect all of that aggregated data from a broad spectrum of individuals to build models. At the end of the day, we want to understand for dementia and Alzheimer's, what is the recommended amount of exercise that you have to do? Now, if you're a Caucasian 70-year-old woman, is that recommendation different than an African-American woman? Is that different than somebody who's Japanese? We want to basically understand population science and understand what are those differences, because we know that Latinos and Blacks have a higher incidence rates of dementia, but we don't know why. How much of that is based on modifiable behaviors, or is it genetic, or is it diet? So that science is just now, coming out. So yeah, that's what we're working on. And Katie, we are still very early. We've talked to Apple, but yeah, I mean, we're a very young startup, just partnering with academic institutions, but this is a tremendous opportunity.
But you're on the right track. I see great potential here, and then the way you do the ecological monetary assessment is going to be so helpful. Any questions?
Katie and John, can I ask you guys a question? So I'm an experimentalist, I'm a chemist. So recently, we identified some compounds, our mouse model extend lifespan by 40%. So all the stuff you guys are talking about are exactly what we're looking for, because we're looking for, let's say, on animal models or potential trials. Let's say, well, I just come out from another section, a biomedical section. They launched some trials, but they're looking for biomarkers. And we don't know what kind of biomarkers we're looking for. Is it possible to see all the stuff you guys are doing now can get involved early? So let's say when we're doing animal studies or trials, because we don't know which direction we're going, right? I mean, even just collecting data, and you guys then can help us figure out, I mean, how that correlate with the lifespan or health. I mean, that will be tremendous helpful.
I'm glad to hear that you see the value of it. So the animal study is completed. You're looking for the real clinical trial on human beings. Is that correct? And you're hoping this kind of technologies could point to the right direction and tell you what data eventually you should target.
It's way earlier than that, actually. So we have a mouse data. We're planning for dogs or monkeys. But then the key is, what the problem is, lifespan, for those take too long, right? I mean, it can be, even for dogs that we're planning, it's gonna be at least 4 or 5 years. I mean, monkeys, they need 40 years, right? So we can using, let's say, lifespan as a readout. That's gonna be problematic. I can do only one experiment for my career, right? So what we're trying to do is say, well, we can study with monkeys or dogs. Let's say, dogs we can study with maybe 9 years old, 10 years old, right? So we can weigh, let's say, some of the device that you guys are talking about. I mean, we can get 100 dogs a year, and can weigh, instead of using humans or large mammals, I mean, that's too expensive and too long. We can use dogs, right? I mean, can we get some information? Because we can get a lifespan information out after a few years. And then we can trace back for the data you guys collected. see what, because what we are looking for as an experimentalist is some guidance. Say, what are the markers we could predict longevity compounds?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that that's very interesting as long as you could get some cooperating animals. We had an idea of using that on some autistic children or ADHD. The main question we had, will they want to wear it? Are they gonna damage it after a period of time? So
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, with that, we don't know. If people, if you don't want too invasive, then there will be something they wear, and they're gonna tolerate that. That's gonna be a new issue. And unless it's a patch or something you can, or needle you can stick into, but then that's invasive.
Yeah, I can talk to my team. I mean, see whether they can think of something for the dog studies that we're planning.
And
we can get 100 dogs a year.
Yeah, there, I like to clarify, when people say sensors, they always think about a wearable, but there are a lot of environmental sensors you could utilize, especially for the constantly moving objects. I know people are talking about pressure sensors, and they have a smart homes. Anything you open the door, you run around at fast speed, and the temperature change, carbon dioxide, you can all measure. And for human beings, the sleeping measure, voice sensor, motion, opening door, and they're talking about non-touching blood pressure cuffs. And from the pupils, you can also measure. People can use pupils to measure stress level. There are a lot of not in contact sensors, environmental sensors you might want to think about as well.
Thank you very much.
You can measure the gesture, the body position, and whether there's a change.
Yeah, I would say, like, looking in the future, I see a point probably less than 10 years where you're going to have an Alexa type of device in your home, and that is going to serve as the primary data collection point for your entire home. It's going to be able to know exactly, there's 5 people in the home, when are they coming and going, what's their heart rate, when are they sleeping, it's going to be able to see all of that stuff. I'm trying to God, her name was just in my head, she's at MIT. Dina Katabi did some work at MIT with a device called Emerald, and so it can identify, like, I'm going to say 100 people in one room, and it can track that person's movement and their respiration. And so those types of devices are going to be in our home. It's going to be Amazon and Apple that have that data. I say that, but will they actually have the data, or will it be a third-party company that they also own that actually has the data? But
Yeah.
That's going to be the interesting part. And that's in your home, and then it's going to be your our clothing, our wearables, our other smart devices, our cars. It's all gonna group together to improve our understanding of human behavior. It'll also be a little scary, because I think it's exciting, but it's also a double-edged sword, but and to answer your point about sharing data to do your digital biomarker research, we're not ready to partner with anybody yet, but we're still doing some early work with some academics.
I think, John, you predicted it right. And I'm actually curious, with the pandemic, everyone is at home. I'll be surprised if no one has done anything about monitoring what you do at home. And then sort of even the mood swing and depression, or, oh, she's getting crazy, let's just get her out, or something like that. There's gonna be a lot of applications coming out in just a couple of months. I'll be surprised if no one has thought about that or done something about it. You never know, it could be norm. We might stay home for longer than we expected. And there's so much data, even just by sitting here, your daily, compare your daily log, you can see a lot.
I think the challenge is for anybody trying to do that kind of research, you've got to write the proposal, get funded, by the time that's all done, COVID, I don't want to say COVID's going to be over. It's never, I don't think it's ever going to be over, but, you know, we're going to probably miss that opportunity, but,
yeah. Well, another thing, when we were doing that, we're thinking maybe there's a new way to conduct research. Eventually, it will be crowdsourcing. You know, everyone has this equipment. You don't have to go through that, but you can, you know, donate some of your data all together. We'll have a sea of data doing something. That might be another way of doing research. I just don't know how close we are to that yet. People have to do the privacy issue earlier on, people mentioned, right? And also with different devices, you have Fitbit, I have a smartwatch, and you're a computer expert. I'm just a lay person. I only know how to browse the internet. And then how do you regulate the quality of the data?
Yeah, I think the consent part in, you know, collecting people's data, it's going to be challenging, but it's not something that can't be overcome. You know, the approach that we take is just having a very open consent policy with our users that says, hey, you know, we are collecting your data, but here's why. You know, we want to improve population health. We want to help, you know, prevent dementia in the future. And, you know, if you believe in that mission and vision, then please share your data. But for other companies like Facebook, you know, it's 100 pages long, and you know, people don't have time to read that. You know, if you are a young company, or even IBM, you know, yes, hey, we're collecting your data and it's for these purposes. But unfortunately, a lot of companies are profit driven, and you know, they don't explicitly say, hey, yes, we're sharing your data with, you know, 100 different companies, and then what they do with it, you know, we don't know. But you know, I think that's things that can be overcome with, you know, smaller organizations that are mission and, you know, purpose driven.
Yeah, you have a list of the registration. Yes.
Yeah, and Ricardo, I put my email up there for you. Ricardo, where are you at?
I'm based in Colombia, South America, not Colombia, New York, at the University of the Andes. And I am not really an ITP person. I am starting to get involved in a little bit of bioinformatics, but just preliminary, because I'm doing some studies in metabolomics and its impact in cerebrovascular disease. But I'm also very interested in taking tools of bioinformatics to enhance our educational outcomes, because my second passion is education. So the idea is to use gamification and information technologies to enhance our outcomes in our different classes. And we have developed a couple of different ideas to enhance ethical thinking, critical reasoning in medical students and science students. However, last year, I was doing some research on public health related to physical activity during the pandemic. And that's why we were collecting data from some of these fitness apps, but it's very difficult, it's impossible to get the raw data. So we only had aggregated data, which is most of the times not enough for a nice publication, even though our results were quite interesting to show different trends in different age groups. So right now we are trying to pull the data, at least to submit it as a research, not as a research letter, at least as a letter, because it shows interesting trends, for example, in the age population that use some of these fitness apps.
Great. Thank you for being here. So not trying to do any selling, but we did publish a digital health book. If people are interested, it's underneath. You can find it on Elsevier's website. There we talk about the challenges, opportunities, and even give you some examples from international portions of the community. So if people are interested, and there's another one coming up. I will put on my website. It's a personal health informatics, talking about behaviors and how consumers. We worked with the American Medical Informatics Association's consumer and the pervasive health informatics working group So we're coming up with a new Springer's book, sort of a textbook, talking about all these issues we mentioned today, from technology, from social economic ecosystem, from the integration, all the way to usability design. So stay tuned. We'll keep you
Perfect. So
posted.
do you have a personal website, Katie?
Yes, I do. Let me see. You type 新青珠 Yale, you might be able to just find it. Let me see. I have a.
Because I found the Yale Medicine website.
Yes, over there. I have my digital health book under publication there. Let me just put it there. Right there.
Katie, do you know about the Digital Medicine Society, Jennifer Goldsack and out of Boston?
I heard of, yes.
Yeah, I think you should really connect with them. They're a really strong team that is trying to help organize, when we talk about digital measuring and digital health, trying to set the glossary of all the definitions of what, so we have a common language, but I think you would benefit from connecting with them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, appreciate that information. You need the personal health informatics book is still in the making. We're hoping by the end of this year or beginning of next year it'll be ready. Appreciate that. Yeah.
It will be fantastic to follow your work.
Thank you. So
Katie, what kind of help do you need, in some of your research?
Right now, I said that this is in my previous work. I did it when I was at IBM Research. Now at Yale, really, just to get people started on this. I can tell you from the IT service provider's perspective, this is no brainer. You got to work on this. But from a medical school's perspective, so many people are still in the traditional way of practice. I'm trying to educate people. So we might be able to invite you over to have some sort of a workshop with students and start up, Pitch Fest or hackathon. Let the new generation realize this is the way to go. Sort of like bring the medical expertise with the technical aspect and work on some problems. So that's what I can think of. Have some seminars over, give some industry talks, just to gradually changing the culture, the fabric of our culture here.
Well, I would add, even existing physicians and medical providers they're so stressed out. They're going on to EHR and they're trying to get data from so many different areas, and that's often reading a bunch of numbers. And we get so many individuals that tell us, if there was a graphical, like a visual interface, that shows my patient longitudinally over time, can you integrate data into Epic or Cerner so we can visually see some of that kind of information? I think the other thing that we've really heard from a lot of individuals was, when we're talking about Alzheimer's or dementia or, aging populations, I might see my patient every 6 months, maybe every year, maybe I'm lucky to see him every 3 months, but it's very challenging for families. And so that's why I might not see him very often. And I'm very concerned that when I see them today and I change their prescription, I give them a new prescription or I modify an existing prescription, how is that going to impact them? And if it's negatively, if there's an increase in their heart rate or their blood pressure, I may not hear about that for 6 months until they come to visit me again, or a year from now, or they might not even notice it. There might be a 10% increase in their blood pressure or their heart rate, and they just don't know it. And how does that impact them over time? And they're excited about the use of wearables. Okay, they got their prescription, and then over the next week, we can use wearables that see that, and I don't even have to do anything. I can get that alert on my computer that says, oh gosh, there is a strong correlation that change in medicine caused this interaction or their heart rate. And so do I need to modify it? Do I need to change it? So doctors are really, I say doctors, I mean medicine as a whole. They're really excited about the opportunity to improve care and treatment, without having to have a patient come back in again. And I think the other part is they're also excited about right now CMS is reimbursing telehealth.
Yes.
So, where I saw a patient every 6 months, if I hire another person or two on my staff, all they are doing is looking at data, a new patient for 18 minutes, make a phone call for 12, send a bill to their insurance company, so they can monetize that information. So it's exciting.
Well said, John. That's exactly why I'm so passionate about consumer health. I mean, physicians, even when they're not overloaded, they only spend how many minutes with you every time you see the person, and then the large amount of work and effort will fall on your shoulder, on the family member's shoulder. Being able to use them, being able to interpret it, being able to change your behavior, we have a long way to go. And then, like you mentioned, the social economic issues, would that mean that people who can afford a smart home, can afford the sensors, will be entitled to live longer and better, and people who are, less fortunate will even left out more?
No, you're right. That is I think, I don't know how you reduce, people who are marginalized by, these things. I don't know how to solve that. I think that is something we're always going to be chasing and are always going to be concerned about. But I think the other, exciting part is offering care to people who are remote and rural, or who have rare genetic diseases across the world, and enabling them to seek the care, using data science to, realize that, hey, you may have this rare disease, and we're going to get you the help that is in Europe or in Asia or in I don't want to say Boston, but or wherever, maybe wherever it is. I'm not in Boston, by the way.
Yeah. Okay. I know we're running out of time soon, but I have one last thing. I'm just curious. You mentioned about the big data company like a Facebook and like a Google, right? I'm torn on that. One part, I want my data private. I don't know what you do with it. But on the other hand, like we said, there are people who are less fortunate or with less means. If the only thing they can offer is their data, and it will be free to them, and there might be some basic analytical tool for them and guide them, maybe that's a good thing. How could they otherwise afford this? But then knowing the news, Google Health once again, you disappeared or closed it down. This is not the first time. I'm not sure how to interpret this. We, as a whole community, probably haven't figured out a success business model to go forward. How many times you heard of Google doing health and then not doing health, then doing health again and not doing health? Same thing for other companies.
So I'm on a lot of discussions about this issue with Google Health, and everybody's like, oh, they just abandoned it. And I think they haven't. I think what they've realized, they have the luxury of tiptoeing into here, let's try it this way. That's not going to work. Let's reorganize. Let's rethink this. And I think, healthcare in general is so far behind when we look at, Epic and Cerner, and, they have this monopoly of all of our data. I think Google is trying to figure out different ways to improve health. And they have the luxury of let's put a lot of effort and money towards this. No, that's not going to change it. Let's try a different approach. So I think they're in this process of regrouping and, trying to change the model and because it is very lucrative, for them, but it's also going to improve health overall. And one question, so Catherine, you've been quiet. Are you kind of just moderating?
Yeah, hey, I'm actually a NAM staff member, so I'm just helping to moderate or monitor the breakout rooms, but it's definitely been really interesting listening to all of you guys. I never really considered how actual research and data is being mined from these apps and these devices that we use every single day. So yeah, it's been really interesting and lucrative for me to hear your discussion today.
Yeah, I'll tell you, when it's lucrative to like beyond trillions of dollars. So, I think the most pharmaceutical companies, on average spend about $25,000 to recruit an average patient for a study. If you have dementia, it's upwards to like $35,000 and maybe even $40,000 per person. So, and that data that they want, which really doesn't exist right now, we're starting to create it. And so, I'm just talking about my bubble, but if we have 50,000 people and I say, okay, well, you're spending $40,000 per person, I'll give you 50,000 patients, and I'll give you a savings. Just do the math. It's incredible. Yeah. And that's just for one tiny drug at one company. I mean, and if you talk about cardiovascular disease or diabetes it's just incredible. And we're just at the beginning. So yeah, I'm
agree.
so excited about, I'm excited about where this is going to lead to in 20 years.
Mm-hmm. I think the pharma companies already realize the importance of this. They call it a real world data, real world evidence, and there's different names, but they all mean the same thing. Once the drugs are on the market, they probably have to do manual survey about, how do you feel about this every half a year, maybe, luckily, and it's so laborious and so inaccurate. So now, like I mentioned, the Parkinson's disease, that was interest from the pharma to start doing that. Now you can do it continuously, knowing how the person reacted to your medication. You probably didn't even have that in the clinical trial. So
yeah, and well, the biggest part is they want to have that data, your behavioral information left of giving somebody a placebo or a drug, and to say, okay, this is what their life was for the 2-3 years beforehand. We gave them the drug, and what's changed. So getting that data left of giving them in a trial, that doesn't exist, not at a high frequency level. And most of it, it's often self-reported. So that's what we're collecting. And
I think the gentleman who asked about the animal models just laughed. I think he will agree with you as well. The data he didn't even see that can shorten his life drug development cycle and can bring in more insight and knowledge and have new drugs coming out soon. Definitely great potential. I don't know if we are under time pressure and if people want to keep talking and just go ahead. We're the last breakout sessions. But Catherine, if we need to wrap up, I'd like to thank everyone for being here.
Yeah, no rush. I mean, there's no more breakout sessions after this. The next activity, I believe, is just viewing the poster hall. But I know how hard it is to actually talk to people at these virtual events. So if you guys are enjoying the discussion, feel free to stay.
I know we have, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say Lee and Mohammed are sitting quietly. Anything that you guys want to ask?
Yeah.
I can contribute to that. I think I agree with all of the discussions you've had. So I personally also work on digital technologies for people with diabetes, and I'm based in the UK, University of Sheffield, and actually one of the awardees of the challenge. So all of what you have said in terms of data collections from various, for example, track devices and all of that applies to us as well. And in terms of privacy issues and things like this. But some of the stuff, for example, you mentioned about Google Health and things like that, I think part of it has to do with marketing. So for example, I don't know about US details, but for example, in the UK, it's a national health service. So marketing to them is not as easy as, for example, in the it's one entity and you can go and market to them. However, then you have to be providing enough evidence to convince them to take on your product, and hence then you have to reach a certain level. Sometimes that is not financially not viable. Financially, it's hard to plan for, because as we know, technology moves on very quickly, and a lot of regulatory aspects comes into it afterward as well. So a lot of this stuff needs to be solved to be able to market better and see people see the benefit of technology, as the technology have moved on so much in health, but healthcare has not did not translate into healthcare, a lot of it. I think in operation rooms, surgeries and stuff like that, it has, because of the robots and all of that can be used now. However, in terms of digital technologies and things like this, is lagging behind. For example, in diabetes world, it is estimated about 10 years lag. So it's very bad. I think COVID have produced some of the, a lot of people, were not very, as you mentioned, now they pay for telehealth, they repay for telehealth, where before they didn't used to. So I think that's, COVID have forced people to accept some aspects of technologies that was before not possible. Example of it myself, I got sick during COVID and I had to get antibiotics. Before and COVID, it's a dream to get any antibiotics over the phone, whereas they did it over the phone without even seeing me. And they basically sent to the pharmacy, and I just went to the pharmacy within 5 minutes, had my antibiotics in my hand. Whereas before I had to make an appointment, go to the doctor sees it and does some lab if needed, and then decides maybe he wants to give me antibiotics and things like this. So I think COVID have showed the potential and how easy it can become. So it's an exciting time. I think it's very nice to be in this space at this time.
So Mohammed, a quick question. Are you located in the United States?
No, I'm in the UK.
In the UK, okay.
Yeah.
I was curious to hear about the regulation over there in UK when it comes to diabetes devices or, telehealth.
Yeah. Yes. So UK follows the CE marking of European Union. So, however, now that they have left the European Union, they are working on the regulations called the UKCA. And that's going to be somewhat similar to CE marking. However, they want to have their own spin onto it. Although they contribute a lot into the CE marking aspects in medical care. So I wouldn't be surprised if it looked identical to the CE marking. However, they are becoming more stringent, both the European Union and the UK, in terms of the regulatory aspects. For example, software as a medical device are now being mostly introduced. And also they have upped the categories, for example, class A, class Bs, also software-wise as well. So currently, UK is introducing they are forming a new regulatory aspects for medical devices. So we're just waiting for it to get published for the updated version.
Okay. UK has to be compliant with the General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR, or after EU is not the same?
Yes, you have to do the GDPR. Yes, so you have to regulate and all of that. GDPR applies, indeed. Yeah.
Even after UK exit the EU.
Yes, yeah. I think they actually worked a lot on it, GDPR. So they.
Okay. All right.
They do want it to be there. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's speaking of GDPR, and then you have the California protections too. So, any wise company would be trying to organize their security to meet the most stringent requirements, because I think we're on this path where more states are going to be adopting policies like the European Union and California. It's just the right thing to do. So, Mohammed, I would, when you're talking about your diabetes research, in 90 minutes, Apple's going to be, should be announcing their new Apple Watch.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be in there this year. It's probably going to take 2 more years, but they're working on diabetes glucose monitoring through the Apple Watch. One of the women on my team actually developed algorithms using the Apple Watch and some other devices. She doesn't work for Apple, she works for me now, but she can build a glycemic index model using data from the device. So if she can do it, I know Apple can do it. It's just a matter of kind of collecting enough data. But that is going to be fantastic news for doing research in that field. And that, yeah. And so, and then Katie, to your point about variable heart rate, and I think one of the things that we're learning is that heart rate is important, but I think a lot of doctors theoretically say, is it blood pressure? What is the impact of blood pressure? So that's another thing that Apple and others are working on. So again, I don't think it's not ready to come out. I don't work for Apple, but I don't think it's going to come out this year.
I heard the same thing. Yes, you're right.
Yeah,
they're trying to use PPG, the photoplasmogram data, to actually predict the blood pressure.
But the problem is, is that how accurate is that information? But at least if you can develop a baseline, with one algorithm, it's a start. So exciting things are going to happen, with all these different devices.
Agree. Anything you'd like to add, Lee? Oh, sorry, Mohammed.
Sorry, just on the Apple Watch, I think it's very exciting that they taking the Apple, the watch that is, it's elegant, it's nice, people can use it. It's non-invasive, hopefully, the way that they want to do it. And then I think that's, in terms of usability, it's very good, because a lot of stuff that's been produced for people with diabetes are clunky, not nice, not elegant, and people do not want other people seeing them use it. So it's also, as it is watch, people, it's not a stamp on you showing that this person has diabetes. It's just so it's a good progress that is happening, and also exciting for us as researchers, because people compliance can improve a lot, and then that gives us the opportunities to then do what we actually can do. We collect the data, produce some expert system, and then try to help either doctors or patients.
Agree. Something has to be user-friendly and convenient. Otherwise, we're not going to have a sustainable result. People will drop off. Even the wearables, and at the very beginning, people were happy about it for 2 months and then forget about it. Adherence, to have our adherence.
Katie, Catherine, Mohammed, Ricardo, unfortunately, I have to run. It was a pleasure to meet all of you. Ricardo, you asked for my email, so it's in there. And then Catherine, I'd love to catch up with you and learn more about your work at Yale. So we're currently talking to about 12 or so universities. So I'd love to figure out if we can help you guys and the ladies over there. So enjoy your day. Ricardo, by the way, I've been staring at your puppy. So it's just really.
He's quite happy looking through the window.
Yeah, my puppy's at my feet, so it's easier for me to see yours than mine. But everybody have a wonderful day, and I hope to connect with you guys again soon.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. It was a beautiful presentation, Katie. So I appreciate, because it was very simple and showed the importance of analyzing some of the data to make good conclusions. I work in cardiovascular disease, so that's why analyzing heart rate variability is very important for me, because you can approximate that to use it as a proxy for endothelial function. So that is quite important. So I think that we'll stay in touch. I'll try to. I found your email. I'll leave the email for the Center for Bioinformatics.
Oh no, let me put my email here. Sorry, I didn't.
Perfect. Thank you.
Right here. Right here.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Because I'm pretty sure that we'll find some ways for collaborating or sharing some data and testing some of the models. Because the other thing is, just talking about the Apple Watch. The Apple Watch is commonly used in the US because it's the phone with the highest penetration. But if you go to Asian markets, Africa, even Europe, Android devices are more used. So it would be important to find ways to match information from the different systems to provide data that is more useful for global evidence, not just for one country.
Exactly. I agree with you. Yeah.
So thank you very much, Katie, for all of your time. And
Thank you
Catherine and
very
Mohammed
much.
for your insight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you.
Take
Bye.
care.
Thank you. Take
I'm
care.
gonna head